Essentially, what I wanted to say was that somewhere in 2012, there was a gas pricing policy that was approved by Cabinet. And one of the key things, slide 13. One of the key things that was underpinning this was the fact that, as at that time, we're expecting Jubilee gas to come, and as has been drawn by the presentations, this was expected to be fairly cheap gas. But we all could see that the next major gas field to come on stream would be ENI, with a significantly higher cost. Now, that presented a challenge. We could set a price based on the current low price of gas at that time, expected somewhere, according to this, around $5, but actually we're expecting something even lower. And then come today, when ENI comes in, would face the prospect of having to increase the gas price to reflect the gas now coming from OCTP at somewhere around 8. Now, we all know what happens when tariff issues come up. Increasing prices is always a difficult thing. One comment that was made was that in Ghana, unlike the rest of Africa, we don't have regulated prices below cost. Now, that was a very deliberate policy that we took, that we didn't want to create the problems we have in the power sector within the gas sector. If we put ourselves in a position where the government of the day would be faced with the prospect of increasing prices, the likelihood that there would be rather a tendency to introduce a subsidy would have been very high, because the price shock is something that no government would have wanted. So the decision was taken to adopt an import parity price. And so the price was set at the WACP level, more or less, which indirectly or directly created the rent which you are talking about. Recognizing that the power sector would be the primary source of that rent, the policy was saying that that rent accrued should be invested within the power sector. At that time, as you all know, there were many issues within the power sector which needed to be addressed. So even though the rent would be accrued, and yes, consumers would be paying more in terms of the gas price, there was also the recognition that due to the subsidies in the power sector, consumers were not actually paying the full price anyway. So by so doing, we've created the situation which we now find ourselves in, which is a great situation that all the trends for gas pricing are down. We all anticipate that gas prices will be coming down overall, in spite of the fact that we are bringing in expensive gas now. Now, that's a great place to be for any government, and so already we've had a reduction from the 8.5 to 7.29. It may come down, but it will be somewhere around there. So that's just to explain how we got where we are now. It wasn't really a desire to, should I say, tax more out of the consumer or extract more money out of consumers. It was not out of a lack of recognition that we needed lower gas prices and lower power prices, but it was just facing the reality that this day would come where ENI would be completed and we would be faced with taking 180 million standard cubic feet a day of very expensive gas. And if we hadn't done the import parity price mechanism, we would have a problem today. So as has been said, we are moving to a weighted average cost now. And so essentially, whatever the number will be, it will be closer to what has been calculated as the 6 point, whatever. One of the key things, and we are currently now looking at updating the gas pricing policy with these things in mind. So we had the gas pricing policy in 2012. The gas master plan updated it and looked at introducing a weighted average cost of gas, which is being adopted as part of the updated pricing policy. That should be done this year. One of the key things, I think my colleague from Ghana Gas was talking about the mechanisms. So definitely some of that has to be looked at. A weighted average cost of gas. Now, looking just at this, you can see the different prices. Depending on the volumes, that weighted average will be different. So if we do the normal thing of setting a price for 3 years and reviewing it some sort of automatic adjustments, that could work. But what we are looking at is having a quarterly review of the weighted average price to take care of any under or over recoveries due to different volumes of gas. So obviously, in a quarter where there's a lot of Sankofa, the price will be higher than a quarter where there's a lot more Jubilee or something. And so these are some of the mechanisms that are being looked at. Another issue is, I think you mentioned about the aggregator and so on. The idea would be obviously that somebody would have to invoice the consumers at a single price, which is the weighted average price, but each of the suppliers should obviously receive their cost, not the weighted average, because for Ghana Gas, I'm sure they'll be happy to receive the weighted average price, but then VRA or whoever is taking Sankofa would have a problem. So the idea is that the intermediary, that's the aggregator, would have to administer the weighted average cost, collect that from the consumers, and pay the invoice prices based on each cost to the suppliers.